We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law, we enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every member should go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer, the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
That is right. Always comply with police officers because they know everything, just like the government knows everything, and you should listen to them because they have the right to tell you what to do because the government says so. A bunch of people got together over 200 years ago and determined what you should obey and what you should not obey. And then a bunch of people took that and took it even further. I am your host, Dave Bourne, and this is Nonpartisan Liberty for All. Today is January 1st, Thursday, January 1st, January 28th. It's the first month of the year, 2016, and we are coming to you live from Las Vegas, Nevada. That whole, beginning fucked me all up because instead of going right into my intro, I talked about the police a little from the intro that's played at the beginning, and I've been watching some of the debate, and it really makes me sick. So we're going to talk a little about that before we get to our main issue, what's going on in the Oregon standoff. But thank you for listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern. And you can listen live on Spreaker.com and NonPartisanLibertyForall.com. You can also listen to the archives on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud. Immediately after the show, you can also listen through Facebook or Twitter. I think directs you to somewhere to listen to it. I don't know if it actually plays through Twitter or when you click on it, it directs you to Spreaker, but you can go to Twitter and get it that way as well. We promote the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedom, as well as exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent, by threat of force and violence. Like I said, today we're going to talk all about what's going on in Oregon, where a quote-unquote militia was occupying a building due to a number of reasons. One had to do with the land being controlled by the Bureau of Land Management and the federal government, as well as a family that has to go to jail after already serving terms, has to go back to jail over a rule that was a result of the Oklahoma City bombing, terrorist law from 1996. And we'll get into the detail of that later on in the show. But before we get to that, I want to talk about this debate. And we may get to the Democratic debate that was on Monday, as we really haven't talked about that. But as I had mentioned yesterday, news came in that Donald Scumbag is skipping. I don't know. I was trying to think of something to rhyme with Trump, but that he's skipping tonight's debate. Now, his reason was he's mad at Fox News and Megyn Kelly just for asking a question, or that she didn't treat him right because, you know, he's Donald Trump. He's a god. he is one of the most arrogant motherfuckers I've ever heard in my life. And that's saying something, because I met a lot of arrogant motherfuckers and I can't stand them. And Donald Trump is one of those people who he thinks that he is just the greatest fucking thing, that you're privileged to be around him, and he's just great. So there was an editorial in the Washington Post today that had said that it's all bullshit that he's not going because it's Fox News and because of Megyn Kelly, that he's skipping it because he has nothing to win by attending the debate, because it's the last debate. Supposedly, according to a bunch of different publications, he won most of the debates. I don't think he won most of the debates. I don't think he really said a lot, and he just kept saying the same things. And even in the way that he said them were more in summary. And yes, that's what you do in a debate, and that's what a lot of them had done. But even in his town halls, it was more in the summary, not how he would actually do something. And that's where town halls, I think, have a lot more time to go into some detail, as opposed to just have all your talking points ready and just go off on that. And I was just listening to the debate that Donald Trump is not at, and I thought it would be a lot better, because essentially with Trump is you have jokes, but they're not like funny jokes. They're pompous, arrogant, annoying jokes. They're those type of jokes that really, it just kind of annoy you. They're sarcastic and patronizing, and I thought it would be better because, okay, he's not there. But I have to remember that you also have a stage full of fucking Republicans. So not that for anybody who it's their first time listening, not that I'm a Democrat. I don't believe in political parties, period. So the Democrats to me are just as bad. But at least with the Democratic debates, you only had 3 of them. I think in the first one you had 4. So at least you don't have to deal with as many. But here you have tons of them. And the only one who really said anything that I even slightly agree with was Rand Paul, but he disappointed me when he talked about, they had asked him a question regarding drugs, and he just talked about prison reform. So that had bothered me. I think even, I don't know if they did or not, but I thought one of the Democratic candidates talked about the legalization of marijuana. There's a couple things that politicians will not fucking touch, man. It's just like part of being a politician, and it's all, they're all the same. They really are. But it's, drugs, they won't really touch them, except Ron Paul really, he didn't seem scared of that. And the police, they won't say shit about police. So what you kind of had today, you got Marco Rubio, who keeps saying the same fucking thing. Everything is about, basically, he's a give up your privacy for security. That's basically what he is. We need to catch these terrorists. We need to end this. Who gives a fuck if we violate your privacy? Sorry, but this is more important. So he's somebody who thinks it's more important. He keeps going to the terrorists. He keeps going to the fear tactics. He can go fuck himself. Basically, they're all talking about getting ISIS, but Rand Paul and Ted Cruz are really the only ones that bring up anything related to privacy, but it's still not enough. Now, just to give the same, I guess, little aside that I gave yesterday is I believe that the presidential election is fixed anyway. So whoever is going to continue the agenda that they want continued is going to get elected. And it really doesn't seem like it matters. It doesn't even seem like it matters anyway. It seems like if you elect any of these guys, for the most part, that's the agenda that you're going to get any fucking way. With the exception of Ted Cruz, I don't know. And Rand Paul, I don't know. But with the rest of them, you're going to get essentially the same type of thing. Now, whether you want fascism or socialism, that's really the only difference. But you're going to get a controlling government that's going to be all in your business, controlling your life. It's just, how do you want your life controlled? So if I'm sitting there as, the powers that be, and say there's only one and it's just me, and I want to take over the world eventually, but at least the United States, and take more control over people and take more of their freedom, most of these Republicans would fit that. It definitely, as I mentioned, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, the governor of Ohio, Kasich, keeps talking about strengthen the military, and all of these guys are saying that too. Rubio and Christie, and first of all, even with the cuts, the military is huge. So I don't know, like, it's overkill. I don't think the military should exist, period. I don't think we need, and I shouldn't say we, I don't think the United States needs a military because they have enough armed people. That was the whole point. You don't need a military. You only need a military if you want to invade other countries. Even Trump, of course, is saying all the same stuff, strengthen the military, more security, more. Marco Rubio is complaining, as well as Trump, that they don't have enough rights, that some law that was passed took away some of their spying ability. Like, yeah, right. Like they actually followed anything that was passed. So that's a bunch of bullshit anyway. They do whatever they want to do, but this is, it's crazy. They talk about following the Constitution 1 minute, and then they're talking about the violation of privacy and rights that they do. It's crazy. It's fascism and socialism. On one side you have the fascists, and on the other side you have the socialists, and that's really all it is. And I think what it ends up being is a combination of both, which is like the Nazis. So I really don't know, though, what a lot about the Nazi economy, how that went on after. But I think the government controlled all businesses as well. So, but as far as did they redistribute wealth or not, I finally looked at my W-2. Looked at the $20,000 that was taken by the federal government, and that's in total. That's not just the tax, because we don't get state tax, just federal tax. But that's not in that's in total. That counts, the Medicare and whatever other shit they take out. I know there's Medicare, Medicaid. Obviously, the federal tax and the FICA shit. So, and I'm not somebody who makes, I'm fine. I'm not complaining as far as how much money I make. But somebody like me should not be having that much money taken out. They talk about, well, we just want to go take money from, the people that make in the billions or something like that pay their fair share. Well, obviously, you're paying your fair share if you're paying in the millions of dollars. I don't see how somebody that makes $1 billion and pays 50 or 500 million in taxes or something like that is somehow isn't paying their fair share. The difference is I don't have any deductions like they do, and that's what kills me. Because if I had my own business and had all these deductions, or didn't have my own business and had all these deductions, then I wouldn't get killed in taxes. But for someone like me, I get killed in taxes, and it's totally unfair. So they talk about increasing taxes, and they're still going to increase taxes on people like me. And I'm not in the fucking 1%. I'm not even close. So what the fuck? And it's just bullshit. And if I didn't work for a corporation, I'd say fuck them and wouldn't even pay taxes. Because essentially they take that money, use it for, $20,000 is nothing in a budget of, $5 trillion or whatever. But I'm sure it went towards something stupid. You can't really, people will always say, well, I don't want to pay for this and I don't want to pay for that. And it depends how you look at it. But technically you're not, but you are, because all the money's just put in one big pot. It's not like they take money from me and then they say, well, your $20,000 is allocated for this. No, it's just they take it and throw it in, and it goes in with every fucking thing else. But still, there's nothing I think that I would pay for that goes to the federal government. I can't think of the roads, but that's gas tax. At least it's supposed to be gas tax, but they probably take the gas tax and blow it on other shit. Anyway, 702-470-7664 is the number if you'd like to call in. Again, that's 702-470-7664. We do have a dedicated line now, meaning that doesn't affect the show, but I would take out my SIM card and use the same phone. But now we actually have a show phone line. So if you like to leave a message or call the show during non-show hours, you can do that. If you would like to appear as a guest, or have any questions, or for any other reasons need to call the show, you can call that same number and leave a message. Also, if you'd like to Skype into the show, you can do that as well. You can send a contact request to NonPartisanLIbertyForall and send your name and where you're calling from and a brief description of what you want to talk about, and we will bring you on the air. And as far as calling in during the show, to expedite that, the best way would be to text, and just text your name and where you're calling from and what you want to talk about, and then I won't have to wait to screen the call because I don't have a call screener, so I'd have to wait till a commercial. So anyway, back to the debate. So their main issues are just ridiculous. And then they ask, you look at the percentage that's spent on the military. They ask Chris Christie what he would cut. And of course, well, I would cut Planned Parenthood. I don't know how much money they give to Planned Parenthood, but it's in the millions. It's not going to make a dent in the budget. Now, if you cut the half of the military, that's a huge amount of money. Between Social Security, I think the military is number one, and then Social Security. Because, of course, instead of actually holding that money, they're irresponsible and they spend it. So they're just as bad as any irresponsible person. The only difference is they can print fucking money. So really, what's the difference? And then the people that just save their money suffer because of inflation. So if you just save your money's going to be worth less, not worthless, but it may be worthless in general, but meaning worth dash less than it was when you originally got the money. So, and that's, I think, another reason to buy gold and silver right there, is to keep the value of your money if you're trying to just save cash, because I wouldn't even bother investing in the stock market or anything like that. I do have a 401k, but the only reason I have a 401k is because they do a match at work, and that's like free money. Unfortunately, I can't take it out, but I figured out something else I can do. And I don't want to say because it's not illegal, but I think what I could do is, and I have one out right now, is I have a loan out. So every time I repay my loan, take out another loan, then I just, get that cash. The interest that you pay in is so small anyway, and you're paying it back to yourself. So I can take, I think, half of it out in a loan. So if I actually have any money left, if it doesn't crash by the time I pay back my loan, because I did it over 5 years, and it's really small. I'm paying like $20-something a pay period, and I get paid twice a month. So it's a small amount, but I wish I could just take it out, because I would. Even with the tax penalty, I would take it out. So doing that, though, you probably end up getting, well, you're paying the money back, though, so I don't know. I'd have to really think about that, but ideally what would happen if things are going to crash, they'd crash right after you took out a loan, and then, you don't lose as much money because you still have to pay it back, but if the money's not worth as much, it doesn't matter. So, but I'd rather, invest in gold. And that might be something, I heard there are gold 401ks, but the problem with that is, and we've talked about this on the show, is that you have all of these companies selling gold. And when I say selling gold, they're not selling the actual gold. They're selling like gold futures or whatever, or you're investing in a gold portfolio. You're not actually getting the gold, and they don't really have it. That's a whole nother issue. But anyway, back to the what I did see of the debate. It's all it's just all the same stuff, and then if we need a leader that does this and that does that, and not that does this, and they just compare themselves to Obama and say, well, if we had somebody that was like this and I'm that person, and it's just the same thing over and over again. Nothing changes. Nothing is going to be any different, because there's an agenda that's already mapped out, that they're just coming in and executing that agenda. And like I said, do you want the fascist part or the socialist part to come next? And really, that was the whole thing with Bush and Obama. You look at what they did, it pretty much did the same thing. Obama, not only did they do the same thing, Obama pretty much continued the work of Bush in certain areas. Now, in some areas, it doesn't make a fucking difference, and they don't care. So you have enough areas where it doesn't really matter to the quote-unquote powers that be, so they're able to differentiate themselves that way. And that's how they do it. And then they argue about that shit, and everybody gets, sucked in, and thinks how different they are because, oh, look at this, the Republicans are against abortion and Democrats aren't, and they're against gay marriage. They want gay partnerships. Or I think at this point that the Republicans have given up on that. I'm not sure, but a lot of it is immigration, is ISIS, is how they're gonna fight, ISIS, which they essentially funded and built themselves as a proxy army to go out and do what they did to the Middle East and attack all of these countries and make them a mess. I mean, Libya, they tried to do it to Syria. They haven't been able to yet. Iraq, all of these countries out there are just a mess, and they've destabilized a lot of these countries. Egypt, really for no reason. Now, Egypt, I'm sure they deny it, but it was something that I believe was orchestrated by the CIA in the first place. So you have all these candidates come in saying the same fucking shit, and the Republicans say what they say, Democrats say what they say, and that's it. But just getting back to Trump real quick. So to me, it makes him look like a baby. He's having and again, I really don't think it matters. I don't know what they really think. That's where it would be interesting, and you're never going to get the truth. But what do the candidates actually think? Do they think that it's not something where it's pretty much rigged? Do they think that they can just come in and win if they get the people to support them? Or do they have a thing in the back of their mind where, yeah, this thing kind of seems rigged? Anyway, Donald Trump, I think, would fit in perfectly as long as he could be controlled. But I think the guy is out of his fucking mind. I really do. And he is having... So at the same time as a debate, he's having a get-together, and I guess he got it pretty fast. So maybe he had it planned from the beginning. But they still did this thing with the Republican Party. They've been doing this thing where the candidates that are really low, because they have so many candidates, because a couple of the candidates that should have just left, they just don't know when to leave. Like Mike Huckabee's been running now for the past 3 or 4 times. I think you should run more than once as long as you don't get the nomination. It's kind of like almost a rule. If you get the nomination and then you lose, you don't run again. And at least it's been like that during my time. But that if you don't win the first time, that, you can come back again. And it kind of depends on what you're doing and your age and stuff like that. And you take somebody like Huckabee, I don't know the last time he was governor. I think it's been 10 years now or something since he's been governor of Arkansas, I believe. Then you have that other religious freak, Santorum. I don't know the last time he was in Congress. And he's another freak. And he's ran the past 3 or 4 times, too. I think this might be his 4th time. I'm not sure. So they've always been at the beginning. So they had them on at 4. And then at 6 Pacific time, they had the rest of the master debaters on that are still in it. I'm surprised they had Rand Paul. I'm glad that they did. And really the only reason I am is because he does come up with some of these ideas or says some things that hopefully make people think, but not like his father did. He doesn't do enough. But it's good to have him in there. So I'm surprised he was in the main debate because it doesn't seem like he's doing that well. But anyway, in the main debate was Christie. I was trying to think of a joke about Christie, but I couldn't think of one. That's a fucked up name though, like Chris Christie. You think his parents did that on purpose? Christopher Christie. Anyway, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. I don't know if the doctor was there. I'm not sure. I think he was. And I can't think of his name right now because they never let him talk and he's like falling asleep. Ben Carson, yeah, he was there because I remember now them saying that he was the only one who doesn't have political experience, which I think is a positive thing, but I don't agree with him on probably anything. So Ben Carson, Kasich, the governor of Ohio, and I believe that was it. I might be missing one person, but that is pretty much the lineup there of the I don't know, whatever you'd call them. The number one guys, I guess. So I'm thinking that I'm missing somebody. Oh, and Rubio, who's still, I think he's in third place right now. But he just sounds kind of like a pompous ass, too, where he keeps talking about to sit there and basically tell people that, you know, hey, I don't care. We're going to get these people. And basically, if we have to violate your privacy to do it, then oh well. Why don't you come out and fucking say what you really mean? But of course they're not going to do that. He's not going to come out and say, well, you know, if we got to violate your privacy, then oh well. And I saw maybe the first hour because it started at 6. I had taken a nap, and I'll listen to the rest of it tomorrow, probably. You know, while I'm working, I can put on YouTube and just play the audio and listen to it. So, and see what happened at the rest of it. But it just kind of makes me sick. But back to the Trump thing, the rationale, I guess, as to why Trump would skip the debate on purpose is, one, there's already been 6. So that's a lot. And he did a whole bunch of town halls, and I listened to his town halls, not all of them, but a lot of them when I was preparing for one of the shows. And he pretty much said the same thing in every single fucking town hall. So he won all the debates, depending on who you listen to, or won most of them. He has momentum in Iowa. These are the things that the writer's saying, not what I'm saying. So basically, if he did badly in the next debate, that wouldn't look good for him. So the debate that's going on right now, if he did badly, I guess Iowa is Monday. So, and then is New Hampshire Tuesday, or is it the same day? So I guess the rationale is it can only bring him down, and he could only look worse. I mean, he seems to just be like going off the rails, man, because That's what this makes him look like. So I think either way, he put himself in a bad situation, because it looks like what he's doing is that he's so much of a fucking baby that he's like, no, I'm not going to do that debate. And that is not hard to believe if you listen to him talk. The guy is like out there. He's not normal. I mean, I honestly, it'd be one thing if he was like a comedian and that was his act. But this is how he was before. And I had mentioned that. That's why I never liked him, because of the arrogance and the, like, he really believes this shit. He's already said, I'm going to be the next president. And maybe, you look at the connections with, and I know a lot of people think these are conspiracy theories, but these are all groups, and they're all groups that are not connected to the government, but the government, for whatever reason, attends them, or at least government officials. Hillary was just there a few weeks ago at the CFR, and they are not part of the government. So it could be that he's been involved with some of these groups, I don't know, and that they want him to be president. They want one of the billionaires to be president, and he'll go with whatever agenda they want him to go with. So that's possible as well. So for me, it's more trying to figure out what their thinking is than, who are the people going to vote for? Because it doesn't matter. The people are going to vote. The people that do vote, which is a small percentage, are going to vote who they've been programmed to vote for, from TV and from who's been put in front of them too, from money. Certain people will get more ads than others. Right now, if you're not a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't even matter. But as far as who's going to be the nominee, it's orchestrated through the media, I think, for the most part. And I think certain thoughts are put in people's heads, and they know that a certain percentage of people are going to vote for somebody if they do this or do that or show these commercials or whatever. So for me, it's trying to figure out who these people are going to pick as the person to be president, not who America is going to vote for, because that doesn't matter. And I think if they really had to do it, they literally rigged the fucking, it's all computerized now anyway. So, but I don't think they have to. I think that's how fucked up people are. Or you could say how sophisticated the technology and I mean the calculation technology, to know that, okay, if we do this and this and this, as far as image wise, and say this and do this speech or things like that. I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs of all that shit, so I don't know. But what I'm saying is it's calculated, just like the example of how they get together and they do those polls, or they figure out what word works better, or what do you call this bill that works better, that brainwashes the American people to support it, like shit like that. So he also says that Trump is sick of debating. He is not a great debater, but had his best performance in the debate in the last get together of the candidates. And so it could be something planned, but on the other side of it is he is just so fucking nuts, in my opinion, that who knows. So I'm still like on the fence whether I think they would allow him to be the nominee or not. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter who the nominee is. Ultimately, it's who wins. But I would think that between the two nominees, you know, just in case, you'd want both of them to, you know, be people that they can control. You know, just if something for some reason doesn't work out exactly as planned. So I guess we'll have to see. And it's going to be a while, just because, you know, Iowa and New Hampshire are next week. There are a whole bunch of states. So I remember, it might have been 2008 where, yeah, it was when McCain won. Because McCain kind of won because other people were winning other states. Like, it wasn't one person dominating. It was like this person won this state, and then it was like 4 people or 3 people that went around winning different states. So it took a while, as opposed to in the past where, you know, certain people have just pretty much won it pretty quick. So we may talk about the Democratic debates from Monday later on, and may get back to this issue as well. But I just wanted to make sure we talked about Donald Trump. But again, depending on the time, we may get back to that, because I did go through the debate and write some things down, and I went through some of the candidates and wrote some things down as well. So there is a new virus, I guess. Well, I guess it's not new because it's from 1954 originally, but Ziika, I guess you would pronounce it, Zika. Now it's becoming an explosive pandemic. I love how the news tries to scare everybody and make it sound like the whole world is going to end when there's any type of virus. So it's like they're leaving things out of articles now. I think articles are starting to catch up with, not all of them, but a lot of them seem to catch up with the attention span of people. Like, most people won't read anymore. Or if they do, they'll look at the headlines, which is very dangerous, because people don't really know what's going on. They just know, oh, I read the headline of this, or I heard this. Just like the sports ticker that goes across the bottom of ESPN that gives you the scores, and it distracts you from what's really going on. And that's really what I think government wants, is ADD type people that don't know what the fuck is going on anyway. But I read this article, and for me, I know that I sometimes won't remember, you know, the specifics on certain things, but I'm also trying to balance a full-time job with the show, and then get as much research done for the show as possible. So it's not that I don't want to read the whole thing. It's a lot of times I'm just trying to get as much done as I can for the show. But it sounds like, from what I read, first of all, they initially said it was from these certain mosquitoes that I've never seen before in my life. They look weird. And I guess it started in 1947 in Uganda, then went to Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, and that was 78. Then I guess they didn't see it until 2007 in Micronesia, then French Polynesia in 2013, and now Brazil is the big place where they're finding all these cases. They have found some cases in some other spots, but they're not really saying how many cases, first of all, and if they are, I couldn't find it, so I have no idea. They're not saying how it can affect adults, basically it says that the symptoms include a below average head size for a baby, that it affects babies. And it says it affects 25,000 children in U.S. each year. Okay. So I guess that was prior to that. But I don't know how that could, well, I guess the mother would get bit. But it doesn't sound like it does anything to, yeah, this mosquito looks really fucking weird. It's AEDES space, these are two words, AEGYPTI mosquito, which also carries, it's almost spelled like tongue with a DE, dengue fever and yellow fever. First discovered in Africa in the 1940s, but is now spreading in Latin America. So it doesn't really say anything on the two articles I read about what it does to adults, because it said some adults will have no symptoms at all, and it doesn't seem like there's any danger except to, and then it lists, you know, everywhere where it's been found and the amount of cases. And it's mostly in South America, Brazil, and Mexico, and then all the islands like Haiti, Puerto Rico. But those are the cases there are a lot smaller. But again, and they said they won't have a vaccine for like 2 to 10 years. But the best vaccine against the virus is every one of us fighting government and society. Hey, I agree with that. But they're going to wage war. Oh, they were talking about mosquitoes. They're waging war against mosquitoes. But they were talking about, like, you know, spraying all this shit. And I'm like, wouldn't that hurt the baby as well? But I couldn't find any clarification. I read these this morning. I couldn't find any clarification on what it does to people that aren't, you know, other than fucking infants. It says it poses the greatest threat to unborn children, but I mean, that makes a huge difference. If it's, you know, just kids, and that it doesn't affect people. And I'm trying to find to go back to where it said what the symptoms were, but one of the symptoms said a lot of times it has no symptoms. And I guess Switzerland and Denmark, they had cases there. But it poses the greatest threat to unborn children. So I don't get this, because again, the threat is just so it says the symptoms in in children are similar to those for something fever, which I don't even know what that is, but generally milder, including flu-like aches, inflammation of the eyes, joint pain, and rashes, although some people have no symptoms at all. So for an adult, it seems like, you know, it is a virus, so you'd have those symptoms and then it would go away. It didn't say anything about any threats to adults. It just said about babies and their heads and their that they have a below average head size, and it often causes failure to the brain to grow at a normal rate. So it can be very damaging to babies and their brain development, but it doesn't seem like, the way they're saying it, like it's the end of the world. Obviously, if you're pregnant, be more careful, and especially if you're pregnant in Brazil. But I guess now they're investigating if a common mosquito can transmit it as well. I never see mosquitoes in Las Vegas, to be honest. I know some people have said they've seen mosquitoes where my fiance used to live. She said they have mosquitoes there. I've never seen a mosquito that I can remember in Las Vegas, probably because of the dry heat. Mosquitoes are usually where it's humid. So, like Boston during the summer had a lot of mosquitoes. So, I would stay away from mosquitoes if you're pregnant. I mean, but talking about this like it's the end of the world, I don't get it. So, it doesn't say that it will affect an adult's brain, that it will give you some kind of brain damage or anything like that. Because if that was the case, then obviously it's a lot more dangerous. But, you know, when people are pregnant, they obviously know they're pregnant. So there are things that they can do to be extra careful. And I'm sure they have a test to test for it. So, you know, if, well, obviously I can't get pregnant, but if I had gotten somebody pregnant, which would of course only be my fiance, I would be extra careful. And every time we went to the doctor, I would, you know, we get a test for it. But I don't know, you know, the headline here, an explosive pandemic, sounds a little extreme there for what it does. So anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the standoff in Oregon. Hopefully nothing's happened since I had last looked at the news and it went through all of this. I went through a bunch of articles as well. So, but as of right now, there's still people in the government building, and which is in the middle of nowhere. So I don't want to say too much right now because I'll go into detail when we get back. But it's been for about a month now. It has to do with government land. It's similar to the Bundy Ranch thing, sort of, just in the case that it has to do with government land. Other than that, or land that the federal government controls via the BLM. But there's kind of two things that prompted this. And it also, I think there's some positives in this as well, that have to do with non-compliance and self-defense. Now, somebody getting killed obviously was not a positive, but as far as the people getting together and standing up and being armed as well. So it's unfortunate that something did happen, because you hate to see somebody getting hurt. And I guess one person got killed, one person got shot. I think one of the people that got shot were one of the Bundys, the Ryan Bundy, and then Armon Bundy got arrested. So we'll play a couple clips, and when we come back, we'll talk all about it. If you'd like to call in, remember 702-470-7664, 702-470-7664, or if you'd like to Skype in, where it sounds a lot better, you can send a contact request for nonpartisan Liberty for All. It's all one word, and just send your name, where you're calling from, and what you're calling about. And if you could actually note how you heard about the show or where you're listening to the show on as well. I won't mention that on the air, but just for my own purposes, that would be helpful. also. So we'll be right back after this. Check us out at NonPartisanLibertyForall.com, as well as Nonpartisan Liberty for All on Facebook and NPLFA Media and Radio Network on Facebook. So we will be right back. NonPartisanLibertyForall.com.
There's been a deadly development in the near month-long standoff at a wildlife refuge in Oregon in the United States. One person's been confirmed killed after a shootout, and the leader of the armed group has been arrested along with 7 others. They're now facing charges of conspiracy to obstruct police. The exchange of gunfire reportedly took place on a highway, not at the facility where the group has been holed up since the beginning of the month. As the days rolled on, the armed militia attracted nationwide support.
Statements are not good enough. I want the federal government to abide by the Constitution of the United States.
Really, you need to pick a side, because this is really good and evil. Pick a side, dig in, take a stand, or you'll be struck down.
My name's Scotty Wills. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. This is in no way an armed militia movement to just rise up against the federal government. It's the biggest bunch of nonsense that anybody ever heard in their life. Thank you.
Brandon Dowd. I'm here to support them and stand up for my God-given rights and the universal law of do no harm but take no shit.
Well, until events took a turn on Tuesday, the standoff had been largely peaceful. The armed group stormed the federal refuge in protest of what they called the unlawful arrest of 2 ranchers. The militia's demands then grew into calls for federal land reform across the United States. Journalist Tim Neville, who's in Oregon, described the situation at the compound.
So as I understand it right now, there are still people at the refuge, in the buildings there, based on the number of people who are there and people have left and come on, but it's at least a dozen, maybe even as many as 30. And the people there are obviously aware of what's going on, and so they have said that they are ready to, defend, a peaceful resolution, whatever that means. Hopefully, everybody will just realize that this was an exercise. They've made their point, and now it's time for justice to kind of come into play.
And it's not over yet. The standoff's now entering its 25th day. Exclusive footage from inside the occupied facility shows how the protesters have been surviving.
And this right here, this room where you guys have supplies, was a weight room.
It was a weight room. We changed it because it was snowing yesterday. We brought some dining tables in. There's some onions.
What is this? What are we looking at?
Potatoes. Look.
And these were given to you guys?
Yeah. Potatoes.
And have you got a lot of people that have donated things and supported you guys?
Everything you just filmed is donations.
Okay.
We do have a nation in distress. People are afraid to speak up and speak out.
I mean, you guys are doing this protest. This is a protest, and it's a statement.
What is the solution?
Yeah.
Nationally, everybody needs to start standing up and saying, no, this is our country, this is our land, this is our government, and we're tired of the way it's being run. And people need to stop. It's either stand up or give up.
Yeah.
And it's time to stand up.
As well as those supplies, most of the militiamen have also been openly carrying various firearms. Investigative journalist Aaron Gupta, who's inside the compound, says they're ready to pay the ultimate price to protect their rights.
The reason I'm looking around is because there are people wandering around, militia members. What I've seen is a lot of them are armed. They're carrying all sorts of weapons, handguns, shotguns, semi-automatic rifles, and those are just the ones that are carried openly. A number of people have also told me that they're willing to die. So yeah, when they're saying they're just patriots fighting for their constitutional freedom, that's true, but you have to understand what they mean by that. In terms of the Constitution, they have a very radical interpretation, and they essentially want to abolish the federal government.
I'm going to go further on the Bundy Ranch, okay, or the Oregon guys, militia. So, and now white people...
Bear in mind, they're still there. There's still a bunch of them there.
Yeah, okay. Some of the families have now left, but there's still some nut jobs that are holed up there. Okay. Now, bear in mind, white right-wingers now are going to lose their minds, okay, when I say this. But in this country, what have white right-wingers done forever? Go take other people's property, right? And they do it with arms. So if you're a Native American, well, and you're in our way, we're going to murder you and we're going to take your stuff, okay? We're going to take your land, and we're going to call that manifest destiny, okay? Now, it wound up forming this country. I love this country. And so I understand that it's a mixed bag, and it goes back into history, and it's harder to judge in a historical context. But if you're talking about the people who are violent in this country, if you're talking about the thugs and the savages of this country, it is white right-wingers who then enslaved African Americans and made them work for free for them. I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to enslave you. I'm going to rape you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to lynch you, and I'm going to make you work for me. You know who does that? A savage, a fucking thug does that. And the South was littered with them. The entire South didn't treat African Americans as human beings. They enslaved them.
Until sometime in the 2020s, we're hoping.
Yeah, okay. Now, you go down the list of every single...
So let me just say on this, that's the Young Jerks or Young Turks or whatever, and I don't know why they call themselves young, because most of them are, well, I guess two of them aren't that old, but the one guy, the Unger guy, is really old. Sometimes they have some good points. Usually they always support government and they're idiotic. But it's just like what they're doing now. I mean, they're talking about what the fuck does that have to do with what happened in this situation, really? Because to me, it has nothing to do with it. So they're sitting there, talking about, well, for years and years, this is what's been going on. And first of all, the stuff we're talking about is stuff that the federal government stole. They're the ones who actually stole it from the Native Americans. And you're talking about out west as well. You're not talking about the South. You're talking about Oregon in this situation. But we'll go back to this clip. And I just found two more. The only thing I could find is two clips that were posted in the last couple hours. So I don't know if anything has changed, but I can't find any articles or anything. All I found was two YouTube clips, and I'm going to play those. But it doesn't seem like anything has changed since I gathered my information.
Transgression on a macro scale, and what do you have? You have white right-wingers, and they take other people's stuff, and including their human beings, including their kids, including their wives. They take them, they use them as they wish, and then if you say, hey, wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't do that. And during the Civil War, they thought, the South genuinely believed that you were taking their freedom away to own other human beings. They're like, well, that's my freedom. I'm white. I get to do anything I want.
I can't believe how ignorant this fucker is. And this is the Unger guy who's a former Muslim. And, if you were talking about slavery or something like that in the context of slavery or the context of what's happened throughout history, I understand that. But to me, this has nothing to do whatsoever. He doesn't even know that all these people are white, first of all. Nobody knows who they are, just assuming. I mean, there's only like 3 or 4 people at the most, or maybe it's 8 people that they arrested, but they don't know who everybody is. And I think they are white, but what is that? It's just like, what is the fucking point? I don't understand how in Oregon people taking the federal government taking land from people, and what really started this up is putting people in jail as terrorists. So let me try to play as much as this as I can before I I just get too fucking annoyed with it.
That's the history of this country. That's not necessarily the today of this country. There's not lynchings. There's not
There you go. That's not the today of this country.
slavery. We understand that, right? But if you don't think that's the history of this country, well, you're stupid. You're an ignorant person. That's exactly the history of this country. Christopher Columbus came in, raped all of the natives, and then murdered.
Fine. No one's saying that that's not the history of this country. See, what I'm saying is that has nothing to do with this issue. If you want to talk about the history of the country and people are debating about what happened, and there's people that came out and said something like, oh, yeah, slaves, they needed people to own them or something ignorant like that, then I totally understand that. But that's not what this has anything to do with.
Okay, first in Hispaniola, then in the Americas, the conquistadors did that, and Columbus and his men did that. And then we did it to Native Americans on a macro scale. Then we did it African Americans, and then we did it over and over and over again. And now the vestiges of that, it is not the same thing, but the vestiges of that is these Bundy guys who get to go around saying, I don't get it, man. Why are these authorities bothering us when the history of my culture is I take your shit and I make it my own, and I do it with weapons, and if you don't like it, I murder you.
And
that's my history.
And that's their culture. So that's like saying, you know, again, they grew up in the West. If, you know, it doesn't offend me per se what he's saying. I just think it's ignorant and it's fucking stupid. But if he was saying, you know, talking about me specifically and saying that that's my culture and whatever, because people that happen to have the same similar skin color or something, not even being from the same country as my distant relatives, it's just fucking ignorance.
That's my culture. Then
he sounds just as ignorant as, you know, anybody that he would turn around and say that they sound ignorant.
You tell me there's something wrong with black culture? That's what Fox News tells me every day. There's something wrong with black culture. No, I'm here to tell you something outrageous, because it's outrageous because it's so fundamentally true. In this country, there's been a history of something deeply wrong with white culture. White right-wing culture that says everything.
Yeah, certain white culture. That's the whole thing. And there's certain black culture, or certain, I don't know if I'd even call it black culture. There's certain black people, just like there's certain white groups, I would say mostly white Anglo-Saxon Protestants that, you know, ruled everything. You know, you're talking about people that are fucking, that have farms and shit. And it's just ridiculous.
It's mine. I don't care if it's your baby. I don't care if it's your wife. I don't care if it's human beings. I don't care if it's your land. It's mine. I steal it. I take it. And if you complain, I murder you. So
that's enough of them fucking morons. But I found two clips that were posted on YouTube in the past couple hours. So I'm going to play those, and then we'll get back to going through everything that had happened. I just want to see if anything has changed since I had last went through this.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com. Now we are back in Oregon covering the standoff that's happening at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. Now what we know at this point is that Armon Bundy and 6 others have been arrested. They're currently being held without bail in Portland, Oregon at this time. Now there were remaining people inside the compound. Some have left and have also been arrested as well, including John Ritzheimer out of Arizona. They picked him up back home. He left earlier and was picked up back in his home state. Now, there was 5 left that we heard of this morning. I just got word that there's a person left, and it's down to 4. Now, the remaining people inside the compound that we know of at this time is a man named Sean Anderson, his pregnant wife, a a guy named David Fry who runs a YouTube channel called Defend Your Base, and an unknown male, possibly with the name Jeff Banta. Now, there's no confirmation on that name at this time, but that's the information we have at this time. Now, we went down there earlier, David Knight and I, and had an opportunity to go approach the FBI at the checkpoint. They were very cordial. They didn't come at us with guns pointed at us like other people have had, but I'm assuming their posture changes more as darkness falls. Now, what I've just heard, too, from some people who are in contact with one of the guys inside the compound is that the FBI has moved in that checkpoint closer to the compound. There's been a lot of, I'd say, out of the norm air traffic that's been happening with planes, smaller planes flying in that area. We do know that they've shut down that airspace to most planes that would be flying over that area, except for FBI and or police vehicles that are being used in that area. So what we have is we have the FBI, we have 4 remaining individuals, we have a pregnant woman inside. What is going to happen? Will this be Waco number 2? Will they go in guns blazing and kill this man and his pregnant wife, a YouTube guy, and another unknown male? Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail. They'll come out. This will all be done. And what we can do is start focusing on the real meaning behind this, which is not the standoff, but the fact that the federal government is, in fact, taking land by the just tons, just taking it from people. And that should be the main focus, not the fact that there's a standoff at this refuge, but the fact that there are unjust things happening and that there are federal government entities that are trying to take over people's lands, and it's affecting loggers, it's affecting ranchers, and people all over this country. So stay tuned for more reports at Infowars.com. I'm Joe Biggs.
You are listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio with your host, Dave Bourne.
So we are back. That sounds like the most updated piece of information because last I had heard is there were 15 to 30 people they were saying that were in the actual building. I guess it's a government building, but it was in the middle of nowhere. So what I'm going to do is go through the whole story of what had happened so people have a better understanding. But what the Young Turks, the whatever Unger or whatever is, however you say his fucking stupid ass name, really what he said was just totally out of line. And I mean, you could call him racist for what he had said in a sense, because if you're relating it directly to those people, now, if he wants to debate what had happened, obviously, the things that happened in history, I'm not going to dispute that because a lot of those things did happen. I didn't listen to everything he said, but, there was slavery and that was horrible, and whatever happened when people supposedly discovered the land that was already there inhabited with people. So, yeah, of course, we know that. But I just don't think that has anything to do with what we're talking about. If anything, it's the opposite. It's the federal government taking over things. So it's that the attitude of his where, him talking like he knows every fucking thing and that, he's right about everything is just like whatever, sitting there angry over what. But the whole thing that I would say I admire about this, it's still unfortunate the way things had went down and somebody got shot, and we don't even know the specifics of how that happened because they haven't released any information, and the people that were there that know are in jail. So I've heard that he came out with his hands up and was just shot. So let's go through the whole story and we'll talk about that part of it as well. So in Burns, Oregon, there was a quote unquote militia that had come there on January 2nd, and they had refused to leave until I guess this all went down yesterday. It's either yesterday or the day before. It was either late the day before or yesterday, but I'm pretty sure it was yesterday that this had went down. So militia came down there. So the reason that, from what I understand, why they went down there, first of all, they occupied a grouped a building which is the headquarters of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, which is in a remote region of eastern Oregon, which was totally empty. There was nobody around there. I guess the areas are fenced off and people aren't able to graze their cattle, and that was part of their issue. And there were no government officials there, nothing. So they had come down there armed. And I think that's the positive thing. I think what they're doing, and one lady had said, you had heard on the video, that they were ready to die. And I don't think people should have to die over this shit. But the fact that they are, and the fact that they are coming down there armed to defend themselves if something happens, I think is a positive thing. And if more and more people start doing that, what are they going to do? The government's going to kill everybody? No, they're going to back off, hopefully. So they were occupying this building, and again, no one was there. It was in the middle of nowhere. Nobody really gave a fuck. In their occupation of the building, you've had people occupy buildings before as protest. I remember they were sitting in the governor's office after the Trayvon Martin verdict, and no one, as far as I know, no one was arrested there. And I think they slept there for days, but that was okay. But this is a place where nobody even was, and I don't mean to compare that they slept in the governor's. I don't know, it was his office. I don't think it was his mansion. I think it was his office. So because it's a totally different thing. But I was just trying to make a point that people have Occupy Wall Street. I mean, whatever. When people are protesting, they occupy certain things. And this was a building that was just totally unoccupied, and in the middle of the winter, Eastern Oregon. So nobody had bothered them. And I guess at one point, and I have the clip of this, the sheriff had come down and said, hey, if you guys just leave, then there's no problem. You guys, we'll just escort you out of town, and that's it, and there's no problem. And I guess they had shut down the schools due to their occupation, which really doesn't make any sense. And what had happened, so from what I understand, there were two issues here. So the first thing that happened, and I guess this was the main one, but the Hammond family, there was a Derek Hammond, the father, and the son. I didn't write the son's name down, but I guess around there that they burn the land that's grazed because it's like desert land. They showed pictures. It looked like if you drive through the Nevada desert, is really kind of what it looked like. So they, the sagebrush, and I guess it's good for the land from what they were saying, that even the BLM does it to theirs as well. So they do controlled burns of the land. Now, I guess when they had done that, and this is land that their animals graze on, their cows graze on. They have a farm. And they originally, what happened was they had burned some of the government land. And no one got hurt, although one of the, I think it was a nephew of Derek Hammond, who didn't get along with the family, originally said that he was almost burnt, but that got thrown out of the first trial because it was bullshit anyway, but it comes back later. So they were charged in that case. Now, there's a law that was passed after, I think it was a direct result of Oklahoma City and what had happened there. And it was some type of anti-terrorist law. And what the law had to do with, I don't know the specifics of the law, but from what I understand, it had to do with, arson. So, and the minimum sentence was 5 years. So the judge, hearing all the evidence, was, this law was for terrorists. So he looked at the law and said, well, that's kind of ridiculous. Although, from what I understand, they still went to jail. I didn't hear that there was a suspended sentence. But maybe it was and I missed that. But from what I understand, they did go to jail. So the father went to jail for 3 months. And the son went for a year and a day because they do the day thing, because then you have to serve the whole year. And he had done that because he was in trouble before. So, which still seems ridiculous to me. So, I mean, I should check on that to see if they got suspended sentences. But I guess maybe because of that law that he had to do something. But anyway, again, from what I understand, the father went for 3 months. The son went for 12 months and a day. And they just wanted it to be over. That was it. They were done with it. Then what had happened, and still it's just ridiculous, because around them is nothing, even though it's federal land. I guess they're over there. They're able to use it to graze their cows and everything. They're just not able to burn the land, I guess. And I don't know how you fucking mark off where the federal land starts. And there's still that issue. And we talked about this during the Bundy case, is how can the federal government own land? It shouldn't be able to own land, period. If anything, possibly the state, but the federal government shouldn't be able to own land. So they, and I believe they were notified beforehand as well that they were going to burn, like they had whatever you got to do to burn your land. It's like a normal thing, I guess, that whatever procedure you have to follow, they followed. They let the BLM know or whatever. And so maybe it was because of the nephew, but they said they threw out that as well. So they served their time. It was over. That was it. Now, then, because of that law, the federal government appealed the case. And I don't know how many years later that they appealed the case. I think it was a while. But when they appealed the case, they said, the federal government, they said that no, they need to serve 5 years in jail. That judge is wrong. And again, the law was for terrorists. That's why, when they pass these fucking laws, just because they pass it for something specific or somebody specific, it doesn't mean anything. They're going to interpret them the way they want, and they can do whatever they want, and it's fucked up. The whole situation's fucked up. So they have to serve 5 more years in jail. I guess the federal government appealed. The nephew retestified. I guess he doesn't like them or whatever, and said he was almost burnt. So saying that they were careless in their controlled fire. And they were supposed to report, I believe, the 4th or something. So this was also a protest for them. Now, I couldn't find any information if they actually went, but I believe they did. And from that, the other issue that came up was, well, why isn't the land just owned by the county instead of the federal government? Because that was a federal law. If it was owned by the county, then they wouldn't have to serve 5 years. And so around that same time, well, it was before they went to jail. It was the second. Armon Bundy, who is the son of Cliven Bundy, which I'm sure everybody is familiar with what had happened here in Nevada, where the BLM took his cows and said he owed like $1 million in taxes and federal taxes, and he had said, well, I paid my county taxes, but I'm not paying the federal taxes because I have grazing rights to graze here. And essentially you don't have any jurisdiction. So there was just to summarize, there ended up being a big standoff there with an armed group and the BLM, and the BLM ended up backing down, and then nothing ever happened. So I guess the son was Stephen. I'm sorry. So they ended up turning themselves in on Monday when they were supposed to. But it was still a partial protest for that. And when Armon Bundy had spoke with the media, he had said that he wants the land to be given to the county because then obviously those laws don't apply. Now, part of the issue was that some people didn't want them to be there and some people did. And that was causing some of the issues as well. I don't know why they closed the schools, and I'm not sure how long they closed the schools for because that sounds fucking nuts. I'm going to go to this other clip that I just got that was posted recently and see if there's any new information. It says something about secret handshakes or something in jail. So I don't know if it has any information. It's the bunker report. So let me play this and see if it has any additional information, and then I'll get back to what had happened yesterday with the standoff and the people getting arrested and the man one getting shot and one getting killed. So we'll be right back after this.
Hello, my fellow patriots. Let me just give you a little heads up here, some information that you might find interesting, but it's not unusual for most of us who've done any of this research for any amount of time. Here is an article a couple days back, from January the 26th. This is concerning the occupation up there. Notice this judge right here. All right, here's the sheriff, right, and here's the judge. Boy, this judge has a lot to say. I don't know how much you're going to see in this particular video, but I just want you to kind of look at this. I'll leave a link, whether it stays up, how long it stays up, especially the next part I'm going to show you. Might not be up for very long, but there's a picture of this fellow right here. There's that judge, and you can read this article. I'll leave a link. He's worried about. Let's see, here's this judge, Harney County Judge Gratzy. FBI needs to act against militants, right? One of those meetings. I mean, this guy, he definitely has it out for the militants, And, of course, he calls them militants. It's just, there's connections in town, I mean, this guy has a lot to say. He's a judge, right? He's just completely against the occupation, completely against everything. He's probably in on all sorts of BLM.
Yeah, I don't think this is really giving a lot more information. I thought maybe it gave an update like the other clip did. It just happened to be posted in the last 4 hours. But so they did surrender. The other demand, although he didn't say it on camera, from what I saw, was that to release the Hammonds. So I guess it was in 2010 that it originally happened, when the Hammonds were arrested and served their time. And then so this is 5-6 years later that they're bringing this back. To me, I mean, the fact that you can charge somebody with a crime, they can serve their time on it, and then you can recharge them is a pretty big issue in itself. I would say that that's almost like a double jeopardy type law. Now, they're not recharging them, but they're changing their sentence, and the federal government are the ones going after them. So I don't know how. I mean, that seems insane to me that they can get away with it. Well, of course it doesn't, because, again, the government can do whatever they want and get away with whatever they want. But by the standards of the Constitution, which I guess doesn't matter, you would think, well, how can they do that? So anyway, they turned themselves in a few weeks ago. So I guess that was their two demands, were they wanted them to be released, and they wanted the public land, the land owned by the federal government, to be turned over to the county. So they said in the interviews, and I'll play some more clips later in the show, that they said that they were willing to stay there as long as it took. They were armed. I believe all of them were armed, as far as I know. The two Bundys that went there were Armon Bundy and Ryan Bundy, which went through the whole ordeal at the Bundy Ranch. So I'm sure that after going through that, one, they totally understood what was going on here and wanted to help. But on the other side of that, they're also targets. Obviously the BLM and the federal government isn't too happy with them. So, especially since they never got what they wanted. I mean, they never got the tax money and nothing ever happened. And it's been going on, it was April of 2014. So, I believe, or was it October? I don't remember if it was April or October. It's like the same Well, not exactly. It would be September and April are at the same periods. For some reason, I was thinking April, but I know it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about the year anniversary. So at most, at least it's been like a year and a half, something like that. It's been over a year, we'll put it that way, that the conflict at the Bundy Ranch had happened. So they went down there, I guess, what it sounded like, maybe 40 people. They wouldn't say how many people were there, which is understandable, but they were there guarding. They had guards outside with guns, and they were asking that they be released and that the land be given to the county. So they were there about 25 days, something like that. And I guess Armon Bundy and 8 others were driving. So they must have been in a big truck. And they were pulled over by the police. Witnesses, and this is exactly how it was presented, that witnesses saw the man who got shot and killed by the police got out of the truck with his hands up and they shot him. That hasn't been confirmed by anybody. And of course, the 8 people that were in the car or the truck are currently in jail. Now, the other brother, Ryan Bundy, was shot in the arm. So I don't know. I would doubt that anybody with or that was in the truck pulled a gun, because if they did, I think they would all be dead, just based on one of them pulling a gun alone. So after that had happened, there was another video that was posted rather recently, and that's why I wanted to see if there were any developments, because before the video that we had just heard, where there's like maybe 4 people left in the building, they were saying that there were 15 to 30 people in the building. They went in and talked to that woman who said that she's willing to stay there as long as possible, that she is willing to stand up for her principles. I know I'm paraphrasing, and that I don't know if she had said that she was ready to die, but somebody did, and she might have said that as well. And when you look at that, I mean, I definitely have respect for somebody who's willing to stand up for their principles and die for them. Now, I don't think that's something worth dying for. I understand that this is going on all over the West and that they're trying to stop it. They had a town council meeting that they had showed, and a lot of people were saying, well, that they don't want them there, that nobody had asked them to come there, that they had just showed up. Armon Bundy had said, well, I just talked to 2 people earlier today, and they were saying, thank you so much for coming, and that we really need you here. And so it just like anything, I think there's going to be a mixed opinion on whether they want you there or not. But the people inside were nervous, saying that I guess the feds were outside with snipers, or there was a checkpoint set up with snipers, that the people inside were worried that the government was just going to murder them because they've done that in the past. So as far as I know right now is just that's the clip that I had played where from InfoWars, that they're are 4 people that are left in the building at this point. So I wanted to play, if I could find the clip from Armon Bundy, and I actually had a longer clip here as well. And now I'm not seeing it, but there was an interview where he was talking about what was going on. So let me see if I can find that.
Here at RT America, we've had a very unique perspective on all of this because one of our correspondents, Simone Del Rosario, has been able to go face to face with the occupiers. Simone, amazing. When you got the news last night that this was unfolding and this traffic stop took place and there was a life that was lost, that was the report that came out, what was your reaction?
Well, first, we didn't know that there was a life loss. We just knew that there was some sort of confrontation, possibly an arrest. And the first thing I did was call Armon Bundy and Lavoy Finicum directly on their cell phones to try to get a hold of them and find out what was going on. I assumed Armon Bundy was arrested and wouldn't be able to answer his phone, but Finicum also did not answer his phone. And when we started to hear reports of who was arrested, you know, Finicum was part of the leadership of this group. He was always with them. And when I didn't hear his name in the reports of the people that were arrested, I had a feeling something bad had happened to him.
What do you think the reaction is going to be of those on the inside now, knowing that someone's been shot and killed?
I'm not sure. You know, Armon Bundy came out through his lawyer and said, we need to take a step back now. Someone's been killed. I don't think any of the core group leaders wanted something like this to happen. They were, I mean, based on what we see from last night, we're still hearing conflicting reports about what happened, but they always maintained that they wanted to do this peacefully. The guys that are still left at the refuge now, these are not the core group of leaders down there. Armon Bundy's asking them to leave. They're still saying they're standing down for now, but I think this is the beginning of the end. If Armon's telling them to leave, everyone that came to that refuge when I was down there seemed to really respect his opinion. So we could see them trying to take an exit.
At the time you went face to face with them, did you sense that their resolve was strong and they didn't really care how this ended?
There was comments that they've made to that end, Ed, but at the same time, they kept saying how they wanted it to be peaceful. And I think that you can infer from the fact that all of these guys were confronted by FBI on the road and the majority of them were taken away peacefully, that they did want this to be a peaceful resolution. The guys that are still at the refuge, though, say they also want a peaceful resolution. And now they're asking for the FBI to release the video of how Finicum died.
Okay, Simone, great to have you with us tonight. Thanks so much.
Shooting leaves member of Oregon protest dead. A shooting took place on Tuesday that left one member of the anti-government protest at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge dead and another man injured. The incident took place while state and federal officials tried to arrest the leaders of the movement. 8 others were later taken into custody. Armon Bundy was reportedly headed to a meeting in John Day, Oregon, when he was stopped by authorities on Highway 395. NBC News reported that Bundy was with 8 others inside 2 vehicles. Everyone reportedly surrendered to police except Ryan Bundy and Robert Lavoy Finicum. Local news outlets did not immediately state who fired first, but a gun battle reportedly took place, resulting in Finicum being killed and Ryan Bundy sustaining a gunshot wound. He and the rest of the group were then arrested. NBC News reported that in an earlier interview, Finicum was asked if he would rather die than go to prison over the Oregon standoff, to which he said he had no intention of spending any of his days in a concrete box. The FBI later set up a perimeter with checkpoints around the wildlife refuge with the intent to arrest any unauthorized people from attempting to enter the area. NBC News reported that carloads of protesters left the site early Wednesday. However, other reports stated that a handful of protesters remained and vowed not to leave.
Three militants occupying that Oregon refuge have been arrested. But not everyone is listening to group leader Armon Bundy's request to go home. CNN's Sarah Seidner is live in Burns, Oregon. She spoke exclusively with protesters who are still holed up at the refuge. Sarah, what did they tell you?
Allison, we were on the phone this morning with Sean Anderson. He says he's still on the refuge with his wife, Sandy, and there are 3 others who are on that refuge with him. They have been negotiating with the FBI, but they said, look, here is what we have been offering the FBI. We offered that if they let us come out of this refuge, we will leave. We will go back to our respective states. He lives in Idaho. The others live outside of Oregon, so they will leave Oregon altogether. But they will not leave if it means that they are going to be arrested. That is what he told me. He says, look, if they let us go, they don't make us go through a checkpoint, we will leave the refuge, we will get out, we will do so peacefully. Otherwise, he said he is not afraid to die. He wanted the world to know that he absolutely would never kill himself because he believes in heaven, and that goes against his beliefs on how one would make it to heaven. He was very clear-headed in the way that he was talking about what exactly they plan to do, but he said they are still talking to the FBI. He said the FBI made some promises to them that they would not be raiding them this morning, that they would continue talking and not go in just at this time. But it is a tense situation. We are standing where the road is closed, and you can see those lights behind me is where the checkpoint is, and there are snipers that are sitting up on that checkpoint as cars come through.
Hey, Truth Seekers, welcome back. Zach here. Yesterday, January 26th, 2016, we got a big update in the Oregon Standoff story, which began January 2nd, 2016. The update is that some of the leaders were arrested, and one of the men there was killed. Keep in mind that all of these headlines are bogus because this entire story is staged propaganda where the protesters are truly controlled opposition, actor agents working on behalf of the government. And the reason that the government and media stage this type of propaganda is to send a message to the public. The message is, there's nothing you can do about the tyranny you live under. You will be ruled by us, the tyrants, and you will not do anything about it. And if you do, it'll end up like this. You arrested, you behind bars, or worse yet, dead. That is the message.
You are listening to Nonpartisan Liberty for All Radio with your host, Dave Bourne. Call in at 702-470-7664 or Skype in, username NonPartisanLibertyForall.
And we are back. That last clip where it was saying it's a false flag, conspiracy, whatever. I don't even want to go there with this because to me that just sounds totally unlikely. And obviously people know usually what's going to happen in situations. There's enough people that have been killed by police, so they don't need to kill more people to let people know that, hey, you do certain things, we're going to kill you. So there's some people who everything is a conspiracy to, that it doesn't matter what it is. They come up with, well, this is why. And so it's something that I definitely think did happen. I mean, there's no reason to believe that it didn't. It's just getting the details of what happened and why they had shot him. I talk a lot about noncompliance and self-defense, and this is really the noncompliance and self-defense that I'm talking about, where they showed up there and they showed up ready to, they didn't show up there with the intention of hurting anybody, but they came there to defend themselves. They came there because if you think about it for a minute, so take the scenario that they came there unarmed and did what they did. They would have been arrested right away, or they would have been thrown out of the building. And look, that's what happens to, I've seen so many videos of police beating people or arresting people, or just for protesting, or for trying to defend themselves verbally about what was going on and the threats that come from police and all of this stuff. So I don't care what anybody says. There is something to be said about a gun being a deterrent. In this situation, just the fact that they had guns, I think, makes it a deterrent. Now, as far as what they were able to arrest them for, I don't think that, because it doesn't say, I haven't found anything that says what Armon Bundy was arrested for, but the only thing I could think of would be trespassing, or I guess I could say breaking and entering, but how could it be anything more than that? Because if they are there in the building, I mean, that's really, there wasn't even anybody there. It's like it was shut down. It's really like they're squatting or something, arrest them for that. But besides that, what else would they arrest them for? So I wish I could get more details on what he was charged with, and that is public information. So maybe that's something I can get, information on later, but it doesn't really say what, it just says arrested. And that goes to the thing too. And I know somebody was killed within that arrest, so maybe that's why. But I read a lot of these stories and I feel like I'm looking for details. I want to know the whole thing. I want to know exactly what happened, especially when I have a show. I want to know exactly what happened so I can come on here and talk about it intelligently. And a lot of times I don't get enough information and I'm on here, sounding like an idiot because I don't have all the information. And a lot of times that's not my fault. And then there are cases where I just don't have the time to do the amount of research that I would like to do. So it lists everybody in the event that was arrested. So it gives that, but it doesn't give what they were arrested for. It just says, well, they were arrested. So I don't understand why in an article it wouldn't say what they were charged with. And I'm trying to look through some articles right now to see if there's something I'm missing. But as I was saying, if more people did this, I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm saying do whatever you feel is the right thing to do, or the right thing for you to do, and what you think is right. I'm not advocating that anybody does anything. What I'm saying, though, is that if more people actually would defend themselves or arm themselves during protests, which there was a protest of, they call themselves the Black Panthers. I really don't recognize anybody as Black Panthers except the original Black Panthers, because a lot of the new Black Panthers are Muslim. But actually, I don't know that they called themselves the Black Panthers. I think they were the Huey Newton Gun Club or whatever. And they were walking around with, I believe it was in Texas, with different types of semi-automatic guns as in protest. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think more people, when they're protesting, should be armed. And I think you in places where you can open carry, that shouldn't even be an issue, because you're able to, you know, if it's a long gun, you put it on your back. If it's a handgun, you know, you put it on your belt. And there you go. And I think that changes things a lot. I honestly do. Now, again, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not giving any advice. And I'm not giving any legal advice, obviously, as well, because it depends on the state you're in. But if you're in a state that you can open carry, I would think that there wouldn't be a problem there. But I would also think that the police would react a lot differently. Now, you unfortunately do have some psycho fucking crazy ass police that are just trigger happy, that might shoot somebody and say, well, they, you know, went for their weapon. But how much longer are they going to be able to get away with that? Because what's going to happen is, if the people don't arm themselves, and again, I'm not saying to arm yourself and go hurt somebody with it. I think that's the last thing to do. But I'm saying people arm themselves in self-defense, because that's the only time, I think, in any situation that you should actually, you know, even when it comes to fights, it's stupid really getting in a fight and I couldn't find the interview with Armon Bundy. Maybe I can find that. First of all, it's stupid getting in a fight anyway. I mean, that's something, you know, if you're in high school or something like that, or elementary school, okay. But, you know, really, besides that, what is the point of getting in a fight over somebody calling you a name or just something stupid? But when it comes down to defending yourself or defending your life, I mean, defending your life, that's definitely a situation where, you know, you'd want to have a gun. But just defending yourself, obviously, you don't want to sit there and let somebody just beat you, could possibly beat you to death. And that's not okay. Now, that's where I'm saying that just the thought or just the idea or people knowing that, look, you know, we're armed. And when I say we, I'm not talking about me personally, but I'm talking about people when they're out there protesting or when they're doing whatever. I mean, if you're living, first of all, if you live in a state where you cannot open carry, move. I know it's not that easy just to move, but if you are living in a state where you cannot open carry, and I don't know how many states there are that you can open carry, but I do know that if they change the laws in Nevada and you could not open carry, that I would move. And I'm not kidding. I would move. I would probably move to Arizona because it's close. In California, I know you're not going to be able to open carry there. But I guess the point I'm trying to make, and I don't know if this is coming across exactly how I want it to, but number one, of course, is, as I said, don't hurt anybody. Don't initiate any force of any kind, not just through a weapon, but through, hitting somebody or assaulting somebody or something like that. I guess I can understand certain circumstances, like if somebody, killed your daughter or something, or raped your wife, or, something really bad, as opposed to, usually in those situations, people would call the police. But I understand if before that, something like that happens. It's probably not worth it, because depending on what you do, you're not going to be there with them to help them get through things. So in reality, it's not worth it. Unless you can get away with it, then, But I'm sure if you beat them up, any cop that would arrest you for that is, pretty bad. But we all know the cops are pretty bad in general anyway, so there you go. But my point being is just that the cops are going to continue to kill people. It's not something that is going to stop. And the government and the federal government and their agencies are going to continue to take more power. And that's not going to stop neither. And it's going to go on until either they take so much power that you can't do anything about it. And that's kind of what I think they were saying, they being the people at the building in Oregon, the lady that they were talking to. But they were kind of saying that, that they're going to, eventually you got to stand up. So when it gets down to that point, it's like, what are you going to do? Now, again, I think that if it's not self-defense, these people that just go out and like the people in Las Vegas and just shot cops, I think that's nuts. And I understand the people that after it happens, say positive things on Facebook and stuff like that. I totally understand that. I understand the anger and all of that and whatever. But like the people here, I mean, I saw their Facebook page. Maybe they changed things on it, but they looked kind of nuts on their face from their Facebook stuff. Now, I didn't know them. I even watched like some videos that they posted themselves, and they pretty much look nuts. So I know some people looked at them as like some kind of freedom fighters or something like that, but I didn't. And I don't think anybody who just goes out and does something like that is, no matter how sane they are or not. The only way I could fully understand something like that is if the cop did something to you that was really bad or something. Like if a cop like raped you or something, or a cop killed, your father or your kid, or, and in more of a fit of a rage type thing. So, but besides that, that's not the answer. That's not, and ultimately the best way, and this didn't work in this situation, obviously, unfortunately, and it's tragic to see that, but what happened the first time at the Bundy Ranch, I thought was a perfect way to handle something without anybody getting hurt. I really did. And I look at that as an example. Nobody got hurt in that situation. The federal government backed off, and it was a positive thing. Somebody stood up to the federal government and lived to tell about it. Not only that, they didn't have to pay the bullshit taxes, and they were still able to, they got their cows back. And I think if somebody looks at that logically, if somebody on the government side actually uses their fucking brain, that is the way to handle it. To say, look, I mean, they have grazing rights. They've been there that long. Even if they don't, like, what is the fucking, who gives a fuck? It's empty land, and you're going to tell them they can't graze their cows there, and you're going to tax them on that, and then you're going to bring down a bunch of armed people over it and have people get hurt or even killed? That's crazy. And here's an example. I'm trying to look through clips that I have of police. But and I think, you know, maybe even the fact that it was the federal government more in control than the police is why there wasn't a shootout, because I honestly think if it was the police and it was an issue that was the jurisdiction of the police, because technically it wasn't, it was federal land, I guess, that they might have just started shooting at people. But here's Sheriff David Clark, who does tell people that they should arm themselves. But here's like what he thinks of people. He's I haven't listened to this in a while, but the title's that Sheriff David Clark says police brutality doesn't exist. Oh, I would have to turn this up.
The good ones, as they say, they don't testify against them. So they're all bad. If you're a part of that gang, you need to quit your job.
Wow, a slap in the face to law enforcement just days after an NYPD cop was killed in cold blood, who, by the way, was African-American. Hundreds descending upon the streets of Midtown Manhattan to march against cops and even chant expletives for those who protect and serve, and were protecting them on that day, too. Here now to discuss where we go from here, Fox News contributor and former homicide detective Rod Wheeler, who was out and got those sound bites for us and did all those interviews, and Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark. Since we spoke to you, Rod, earlier, let's get the sheriff to weigh in. Sheriff, your reaction to some of the sentiment you heard on the streets on Saturday.
Well, it's just crazy talk. That's ignorance in its purest form. You know, I think we need to rethink this strategy. I don't know why the police even bother policing those demonstrations. They're not protests. Those people advocate for the of our legally constituted government.
Hey,
what I would do
says they have a
is
point,
let them fend for them. Let them fend for themselves. Let the good law-abiding people of New York clash with them for disrupting their lives, disrupting their businesses. Then the police can show up and arrest these subhuman creeps for creating a disturbance. That we can do.
Now, Rod, do you have a different sense? You're actually on the street talking to them. Number one, did the cops play an important role in keeping them safe? And you tell me about the sentiment you heard.
They did, Brian. I mean, the cops were out there. You know, I must say that the police were taking a lot of verbal abuse while they were out there, and it was really unfortunate. But I also must say that the police did not turn their backs on the citizens, and even the people that had the biggest mouths out there, the folks that I was talking to, if they were to call those police officers today, those same police officers would still be there to assist them. Look, Brian, it was just last week when a young New York police officer was gunned down in cold blood right here in this city where I'm at now. And you know what? This officer hasn't even been eulogized yet, and these people are out there talking about deaths to cops. So I think...
So that's their fucking job anyway, that, you know, if you don't like the job, then don't fucking work the job. You can't say that, like, oh, well, because somebody killed a police officer and then there's people protesting the police, that they're, you know, they wouldn't help them. I don't know why you'd want to call the police in the first place anyway to get help, because it's not going to turn out good anyway.
It's ridiculous, and I wish that the politicians would speak up a little bit more, because actually, you know what I think? I think a lot...
Yeah, I wish they would speak up and talk about the fucking cops that are killing people all the time. And it goes way beyond that. This is what people don't understand. Take away all the killings for a minute. And I know, because of fucking groups like Black Lives Matter, who go and read their website and what they actually say, because they're not really a group that is for the main thing. Their main purpose is not to stop police brutality and to stop police from killing people. But if you look at, people are only looking at police murders. They're looking at the number, even if it's 1,100 or 1,200. They're saying, well, look how many interactions there are with police, and look at how many people actually get murdered. Not a lot, and percentage-wise. But they're forgetting about all the people that get beaten and harassed and charged with crimes they didn't do, and just talked down to. You get pulled over for a ticket and you get talked down to, like you get a lecture from a cop. Like, who the fuck is he to give you some fucking lecture like he's better than you? And you get treated like shit. And that's at the lowest level. And those are the cops that are considered the good cops. Then at the extreme, you have the cops that are actually killing people. So I want to talk about some of these politicians that are running for president. But before I do, I just want to get this whole thing straight regarding noncompliance and self-defense. And I don't want people to think that in any way I'm advocating doing anything to the police, because I'm not at all. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I don't want to see the police get hurt. I don't want to see people that aren't police get hurt. I didn't know what I should say for the other side of that. Just people in general, I guess, get hurt. But something more than what is going on now has to be done. And the same way you have Larkin Rose's When to Shoot a Cop. And I don't know how many people have heard that. And it's pretty long. I'd play it, but maybe if I have time at the end of the show. But his point, right away, people call him, they badmouth him, and cops, say bad things about him and whatever, just based on the title. But they don't even know what he's really saying within the speech. And really what it is just saying that when do you get into a situation where you actually have the right to defend yourself against a police officer? Because what is the difference between a police officer and just a regular person? Now, we know the difference is that they have a whole bunch of people that they can call that back them up with guns. That's a difference right there. And they're plenty deep, because it's not just the police. It goes, further and further up if it had to. But if a cop does something bad to you, or, well, that's not a good phrase to use, does something bad to you, but if they assault you or attack you or anything like that, why do you not have the right to defend yourself? And and that's where things are really fucked up. And I've said this, a whole bunch of times, that unless people are going to look at the power of the police and put the police on the same footing as any other person, then nothing's ever going to change. And that's why I advocate for getting rid of all police. The whole point being that what is the point of police if you really look at it? What's the most important thing about police? Well, the most important thing about police that I would say is protecting people that can't protect themselves and keeping people safe that can't keep themselves safe. And I say that can't because not to say that if you can, it means anything, because there are some people, if a gang of, hundreds of people are looking for you, pretty much I don't think anybody could keep themselves safe in that situation. But that is really the purpose of police, that I would say, because why else? They show up after something happens, and then you could say, well, to make sure that the person that committed a crime goes to jail. So to fill up jails or to punish people. But what does that do for anybody, really? In reality, and I understand people going to jail for committing crimes like murder and rape and stuff like that. I totally understand it. But what I'm saying is, what does that really do as far as keeping you safe? And, well, it may keep you safe in a situation that person might come after you. So if somebody's locked up, that might help to keep you safe. But besides that, it's what does that really do for you if a person gets punished or not? And I know people, obviously want other people that have committed crimes against them punished, but it's not like it does much for you. So my point being, again, is just that I think that all people, whether they're protesting or not, one, have the right to not comply with any law that doesn't hurt anybody else or their property, and they have the right to defend themselves against anybody, whether it's a government agent or not. And that was my page that really everybody seemed to keep away from. They were viewing it, but wouldn't like it, like they were scared of it or something. It was NPLFA presents noncompliance and self-defense. Because that's the only way I see anything changing. This whole shit with the debates and, well, we're going to get the right people in there. We got to get, if we just got the right person in there, then we'd be fine. How many times have people been saying that? How many times have people been saying that if you get the right person in there, then, or right people, like, if we get the right people in there, that's all we need to do. Or we need to, I've heard this before too on my own show, that we need to convince people, and talk to them about how important it is to vote, and talk to them about who to vote for and why to vote for certain people and all of that shit. Now, one, I think even in most cities now, the elections are rigged, definitely on the federal level. But even if they weren't, it's like it doesn't make a fucking difference. So this whole thing of to just continue to take abuse, and because it's not or because it is a government agent, that it's okay. Like, if it's anybody else, it's not okay. So if a guy just, comes over and pushes you and punches you in the face, that's not okay. But if it's a cop that does it, well, you're just supposed to sit there and take it. And I've heard people even say this, that it even says it, the clip at the beginning of my show, that, just do what the officer says, and if it's wrong, get straightened out in the court. And it won't get straightened out in the court because the judge essentially is on the same team as the fucking police. So it doesn't really matter. You're not going to get it straightened out. If a cop does something, how many times do cops fuck people? And I've had it happen to me, and I complained, and they don't do anything. I've called internal affairs or went to make a complaint. They don't give a fuck. So that's why when we're talking about all of these politicians and the people running for president, it's all bullshit. We can talk about them, and that's fine. And it's interesting talking about what they're saying that they stand for. And maybe if they actually had the opportunity to do what they wanted to do, maybe they'd do it. But I think most of them are just in there for the money and the power. So we actually do have a call. We have Steve McBride on the line. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That sounds good. He's actually on Skype, but he's on the phone on Skype.
Cool feature. Just found out about it. I didn't know it worked this well.
Yeah, I actually have, I just got a new phone, and I think you can download Skype onto a lot of phones, but I just, my new phone came with Skype, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's totally awesome. Yeah, no, on that whole thing right there, it's crazy. We're given the opportunity to vote, right? Like, that's our right. We have the right to vote, to make changes in our system, and it's terrible that we have this right to change our policies, so we're told. But like you're saying, when it comes down to like some guy coming up to you and shoving you, pushing you. I saw this video recently, straight up kicking this man in the chest, this motorcycle rider. That wouldn't be cool. No one would stand for that. If you have your wits about you, you're going to stand your ground. You're going to defend yourself. But if it's a cop, you got to sit there and take it. If it's a government official employee, what entitles them besides what they've given themselves? We don't vote for that shit. We don't want them
nothing.
Yeah.
It's also that people don't think about this. You're just born into this system, and you're expected to respect it and obey it and agree with all this shit, even though you never consented to anything. You never said that this is okay with me. I agree to these laws. They just say, hey, these are the laws. If you don't like them, too fucking bad.
Right.
And that's really how it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when we stand up for him, like you're saying, the guy, goddamn, the guy in Oregon, it's so messed up. What the hell? Like when we want to say like, no, enough is enough. This is bullshit. the FBI fucking kills that guy. And it's the same thing. Oh, wait, well, we don't know the whole story is what people are going to say.
They always say that, right?
Right? Yeah. Like, we don't know the whole story yet. And it's that's you know, it's plain and simple. You know, these people, you know, if they were crazy, you know, armed militia that were not, you know, Americans, if they were not Americans, then they would have fucking opened fired on every single one of the FBI agents in retaliation, you know. But no, they simply, it's obvious that they were complying. And this guy, you know, who was standing up for what we believe in, you know.
Well, I mean, that's what it is, that they came there to, you know, protest and stand up for themselves.
Freedom,
and unfortunately, I believe that all activists, and whether you're protesting or whatever, that need to open carry a gun. And I think if the more people that did that, it's a deterrent, no matter how you want to look at it. And police know if a bunch of people have guns, they're going to be a little less, you know,
shady, screwy.
They're not going to be as quick to start something with somebody who has a gun, even though they have guns too. So, and even though the purpose is not to start anything, but it's still there as a deterrent, and it's there to protect oneself. So, the whole thing that happened there, I don't really know, because there's no of what happened in the car with the guy who got killed, because everybody that was there is in jail right now. So
right, okay, yeah. I mean, fair.
I can't find any of the specifics. There was somebody who supposedly said that he got out of the car with his hands up.
That's what I heard too. Yeah,
shot him. So that's all I had heard about that. I wanted to talk a little about the candidates, even though they don't really matter.
Sorry, I got off track. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I was going to talk a little more about that, but because that is important. Yesterday we talked about hacktivists, and I realized how important those are, and I think the most important things, to be honest, is I think non-compliance and self-defense, and making sure you're armed, along with you know, hacktivists, I think are really important as well. And I think the whole peaceful parenting and not disciplining your kid to grow up to be someone that's just going to worship the state. But that's more of a long-term thing, not something that you won't see the results for, you know, 15 to 20 years later or something when it comes to parenting. But I think that, along with those other things, could really change how things are. But this whole bullshit, that what they do is they convince you that you have to change the system through the system, and you do that through voting. So look at how things are already. So you talk about the president. So first of all, you have over 300 million people that are in the country already. So out of those 300 million people, I think it's like maybe 200 million eligible voters, or 200 million something, or 100 million 80 or something, somewhere around there. It's so, you know, because it's everybody over 18 except convicted felons, depending on the state you live in, because some states, they allow convicted felons to vote, which I think, I mean, that's fucked up in itself. So how can you lose a right?
It's weird. Like, what the fuck is that? Yeah. How do you lose the right to vote? It's like, oh, you're alive and well, and you know, you did fuck up. I mean, you know, how are we going to color that different one way or another? Like, okay, this person's a murderer, this person's a drug dealer, this person over here. Like how did they lose the right to vote? They still have an opinion. You know
yeah, I mean, well, I don't think people should lose the rights for anything. I think a right is a right. I think if you go to jail for something, once you get out and, you know, served whatever probation and whatever else, that you should be able to get a gun too. This whole thing,
it's self-defense, yeah.
You lose your right to defend yourself because you went to jail and got convicted of a felony, not to mention all the felonies that are bullshit felonies. But
right.
I mean, even if it was a violent felony, what, you can't reform yourself later?
Exactly.
And you can get a gun illegally anyway. I'd rather someone get a gun legally, because then at least you could trace their gun if they ever did anything with it. But
right,
you know,
good point. Yeah, that's exactly good. Yeah, perfect.
I mean, obviously, if they went to jail, they probably know a whole bunch of people now that can get them guns illegally. So, you know, what's the difference, really?
Right. So you got unregistered dirty guns out there, you know, or you got these, you know, random guns from random places. Who knows? And then what difference is it except the fact that, you know, that one is traceable through law? You know, you could, if there's going to be legislation on it, you know, I mean, you look at medieval times, you look at back in the day, people had swords left and right. You know, I mean, there's you go to your kitchen, you got, you know, cutlery for cutting steaks and whatnot. And they can be weapons at any point in time. I mean, in Britain, you know, they don't have mass shootings, they have mass stabbings. Same thing in China.
Well, their crime rate has gone up in general because of the fact that people don't have guns to defend themselves. Yeah. It's real easy to rob somebody or commit another crime.
Poor bastards.
What?
I said poor bastards, yeah.
Well, violent crime has gone up. You know, rape, assault, robbery, because most people don't have guns. So you get a group of people, it's a lot easier for them to rob somebody, or, you know, I feel bad for women in these places because they are vulnerable because of the fact that, you know, they don't have a way to defend themselves. I guess Steve put himself on hold. I don't know if he did that on purpose or by accident. So we'll wait for him to come back there. But
oh, my apologies. I just got cut off there. I had an incoming call that came in. I had to cancel it real quick. And I was actually just going to say, you know, you can consider that fact, you know, over there in England, you know,
no, I guess he put himself on hold again. I'm not able to, I guess on Skype, if somebody puts themselves on hold, I cannot, maybe I can unhold them. I don't know how to do it though. So I'll just have to wait for him to come back. But regarding the presidency, and I know people fought for the right to vote, women fought for the right to vote, black people fought for the right to vote, even though they technically had it, but people had stopped them from voting in the South and things like that. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't really mean much. First of all, you should never have a country that is this big population-wise. It's I think it's the third biggest country population-wise in the world, because the more people, the less say. And I've talked about this before. You know, obviously, if you have 10 people making a decision, you're going to have more say. You have 1/10 of the say than if you have 100 people and then you have 1/100th of a say. So obviously, either way, you're going to lose lose some amount of say that that you would have. So the same thing with, when you're talking about the president, voting for president, and I don't know what the percentage of voters are. I mean, it keeps going down and down. So like Obama didn't even get the the majority of registered voters that voted for him. He just got the majority of people that voted. So there were more people that didn't vote for him than that did. So looking at, I guess, the candidates, I mean, so you already have, first of all, these people selected for you. And I kind of went through just more of, for the interest part of it, what these people stand for, or at least what they say they stand for. Now, depending on who they are and how far they go, I don't know that they're going to be doing any of it, or if they even would do any of it if they got elected. So like you have, for the Democrats, you have three people. So if you're a Democrat, right, you have at your primary, you have a choice of three people. That's it. What if you don't like any of the things these three people are doing? Now, with the Republicans, and I didn't go through all of them, but I believe there's like 14 or something, because you had 4 today in the kind of like the second tier that they had on at 4:00, and then at 6:00 they had like the first tier, and I think there were 7. And then you have Donald Trump, who is he's the super tier. He was too important to go to the first tier, so he's on the super tier there. But even with that, so for the Democrats, you got a choice of 3 people. For the Republicans, you have 12, but the majority of those have no chance of winning anyway. So even though you could say, well, you have this many choices of people, most of these people that you have choices of, it doesn't matter if you vote for them anyway, because they're not gonna win. So it's like that whole throwing your vote away theory, where they say, oh, if you vote for the Libertarian candidate, you're throwing your vote away, which I mean, in a way, I don't believe that, but I believe in being that I believe things are rigged. It's hard to say either way. Like, I guess you're throwing your vote away no matter what you do. So, regarding, because I said I was going to talk about the debate from Monday. So they structured it in a way where it was more like a town hall, and then they gave each candidate a certain amount of time, and people in the audience asked them questions, and then they of course responded to the questions. So Bernie Sanders essentially went through his single payer health plan, how he wants to move from Obamacare to essentially a single payer where everybody has, well, I don't know if I'd call it single payer because I think it's just free. But he doesn't realize that, I don't know what he went to school for, but he doesn't realize that things aren't just like free. Like everything costs money, whether it's taxes or whatever, there's somebody paying for it. So in that case, it might be quote unquote free where you don't get a bill for insurance, but you get a tax bill that pays for it, or collectively with all the taxes, it pays for it. So he basically goes through that. I think he's even kind of taming it down. And it's interesting, as I had asked earlier, do I think that somebody like Bernie Sanders, does he think that things are rigged, or does he actually think that, hey, I can get enough people to vote for me and I can be president? Now, if he's the person that they want to be president, then obviously he would know that, I would think. I don't even know, that's even interesting to think about in itself, because if you look at it, I mean, how would that even be done? Where, like I talked about in 2008, there was a Bilderberg meeting that same weekend. Obama was supposed to be somewhere. They got all the reporters on a plane, and then he supposedly met with Hillary. But that same weekend, there was a Bilderberg meeting. Now, that doesn't mean that it had anything to do with it, that they met at Bilderberg and talked about, okay, Obama, you're going to be the president or not, or what. Because you could say, well, if that was the case, wouldn't somebody expose that? Or is it just they get elected and then they're told to do certain things and they realize the consequences if they don't do them? Because it's I don't know exactly how that would work. You know what I mean? It's hard to, look at it. And like I said, I mean, I don't think it's just like the Bilderberg Group or the Council on Foreign Relations or billionaires or lobbyists or whatever. But at the same time, I don't think they have the ultimate decision on certain things. But assuming that they don't, where do they get that from? I mean, who's the one feeding them decisions? Do they have the automatic handler that's just there? Are they told by, So I know that shit does work, because if you look at corruption and all the corruption that's taken place and things like, in Serbico and other stuff where just there's been conspiracies and there's been things along those lines. But if you look at the president, obviously, if everybody knew, would they, or you look at, say, like the murder of John F. Kennedy and how many people that were probably involved or had information on that in government, or that were aware of something. I think people had bits and pieces of information that it wasn't necessarily you had all these people that knew the whole story, but it's just interesting to think about how exactly that would work. And I guess it would be a need to know basis, because then these people would have to be acting as well. So, Hillary always comes off as fake anyway. So I think, Hillary thinks that she's going to get the nomination no matter what, because they're going to make sure that she gets the nomination. And she comes off that way. And really all she talked about, and it was based off of questions, because it was a town hall, like I said, a town hall setup. So it was based upon, the questions of the people there, and that's the direction it would go. But she brought up inequality a bunch of times, and I had just brought up an article yesterday, although I just brought it up briefly, about how Camille Pagula talked about, how she's going to get the men's vote, because she was talking about inequality of women, inequality of homosexuals, inequality of everybody but basically, I guess, white men. I don't know what the voting percentage of white men is that actually vote, and what percentage in the Democratic Party neither, because it depends on that too. It obviously depends on how many people show up, but I think, again, that I can't see her not getting it unless there's some plan with Bernie Sanders and to move the country towards socialism, that the powers that be really want to move the country towards socialism, and they want to use Bernie Sanders to do it. But I mean, Bernie Sanders is, I think, 74 years old. Jesus, if he stayed in office for 2 terms, he'd be what? 86? No, 82. Because he's 7, what did I say? He's 74. So yeah, he'd be 82. I don't know how old Reagan was, but he was pretty old. That's even just scary in itself. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want someone that old for president. I know you have the vice president, so it's not like it's a huge thing, because obviously if the president dies, then the vice president comes in. But if he doesn't die, but he's like going nuts, kind of like at the end of Reagan's presidency, he was starting to get Alzheimer's, from what I understand. So you had, Reagan with most of his mind, I think, at that point, but maybe he only had, 3/4 left at that point. And, he's the president of the United States with his finger on the button there. And, I would say that that's kind of scary. I don't think somebody that old should be running for president. Now, I don't think there should be a law that says you're too old, although there is one that says you're too young. So, you know, if you want to have one that says you're too young, then maybe you should have one that says you're too old. Hillary's not that young neither, but I think she's 64. So, I mean, she's got at least 10 years on Bernie Sanders. I wouldn't worry about her age. But, yeah, she was talking a lot about that. She seems to try to sound like she's a socialist at times to compete with Bernie Sanders, but I don't know what Hillary is. I think Hillary is whatever I mean, she's a Democrat, so she's going to follow that, but she's whatever she has to be to get elected. In answering questions, and I'm looking at my notes, you know, she wants to defeat ISIS. She said she came up with the foreign policy. She helped come up with the foreign policy regarding Iran. Besides that, I don't have a lot from her town hall. Now, I have heard her talk before, obviously, about a lot of different things. And, you know, there was a documentary on her as well, and who knows how accurate this is, but that she always wanted to be president. That's one of the reasons that she married Bill. She wanted to get close to a politician because that was her goal. And that's why she got very involved in healthcare when Bill was in the White House. So, and then there's, of course, the rumor that, you know, she's really a dyke and he just married her for whatever reason. I don't know why he would do that, though, because he obviously likes girls a little too much, I think. It got him into a lot of trouble. But I don't know what, you know, how far she would go to become president. And she still might be the one that ends up being president. I mean, for all we know, Trump might just implode. Or on Glenn Beck, they were talking about all the things that they essentially have on Trump that aren't secrets. They're things that he wrote in his books and just things that he did and that he said publicly, and that he's not being challenged right now, meaning that nobody's bringing any of this stuff up. And what they might do is, you know, wait, if he gets the nomination, then they can bring all this stuff up so that, you know, Hillary, everybody knows about. That's the one thing I think with her is I don't think you have any scandals with Hillary to bring up. I think everything that she's done, I mean, everybody pretty much knows that. You know, she's been around for a while. She's been the Secretary of State. She's been a senator from New York. So what else about Hillary are they going to, you know, dig up? I mean, she already has some scandals going on right now with the email scandal and what happened in Benghazi, but those seem not to really affect her. And you can't forget about the woman side of it too, that, you know, I was watching a horrible documentary on Barack Obama, and it was all about everybody hates Barack Obama because he's black, and all the Republicans try to make it harder for him because he's black. It was just fucking ridiculous. But one of the women in there, you know, talked about, well, I didn't know if I wanted Hillary or Barack because Hillary's a woman, but Barack's black, and I wanted, one to be a first. And so even with that, there are people that vote for just stupid reasons, like people that would maybe vote just because she's a woman. But again, I guarantee you that all of this data is known by whoever's putting this together, and they come up with an estimate probably almost to the T of how many votes they're going to get. And then from there, they look at what they have to do to get that person elected. So it's, that's the way I think it's rigged. But I think it's almost like brainwashing people too, though. I think they're able to, from government media, from, other politicians and things like that. They're able to influence people that much. Or again, like they could have, like if Trump gets the nomination and then the person that they want elected is Hillary, then they'll pull out all that stuff on Trump, and they'll do it enough where the people that are voting will see all that stuff, and they'll be able to destroy Trump enough where all the people that are unsure or could go either way will vote for Hillary instead of Trump. So it's things like that that I think are done to really rig elections, and especially a presidential one, because you have so many people that vote that you can, I think, sway a huge amount of people by certain things happening. So, for example, like, I don't know, like if there was some scandal with Trump, they know that, okay, these, 10 million people are going to change their vote just based on that or something, for example. The difference, of course, in the presidential election, too, is it's all by state. So you have to win the state as opposed to, winning the popular vote. I did take some notes about this O'Malley guy, and of course I don't like the majority of what he says. He was the only one who talked about decriminalizing marijuana, though. That was it. But then, of course, he talked about all this other shit that I don't agree with. He brought up climate change, of course, and just anybody who brings up that, well, he didn't say this, but other people have, that in order to save the planet, you all have to pay a whole bunch of taxes. There's so many holes in that, and it's so easy to rig these things, man, and to make people think something that's not even, there's so many examples of them doing it. So how can you believe that? No, well, we have all the scientific evidence and whatever, and I can't. If there's an agenda for something, there's no way I'm going to believe it. It's half the things that maybe don't even have an agenda. It's hard to believe because you never know if it's just what they're doing is preparing an agenda and initially just coming out with something like the mosquito fucking thing. that, you know, it doesn't sound like there's any agenda to that except to protect your babies. But who knows? I mean, that's something that at some point they could, you know, there's some kind of agenda there to get people to take shots or to get people to do this or that or whatever. I think the government controls a lot more than people think they do. I really do. I think there's a whole fucking underground fucking, like a whole underground government. You know, you got the people that you think run things, and then you have like a whole secret underground government that really run things. And those are the people, of course, you have to worry about. So that's about all we have for today. I'd like to thank Steve for calling in, even though I don't know what happened with him. He might have got another call. And we'll be back. Today is Thursday, so tomorrow's Friday, which is great. So we'll be back next Tuesday. So thanks, everybody, for listening in. Go check out the website. Go check out Spreaker. Or go to YouTube, listen to some of the archives. And again, we'll be back on Tuesday. Thanks, everybody.
And just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to take the law. We enforce it. But at the end of the day, each and every